Imagine waking up one morning, looking out your window at rolling Yorkshire countryside, and thinking, you know what this needs? About 1,175 hectares of solar panels. Because nothing says protecting the environment quite like covering prime agricultural land with industrial infrastructure that locals absolutely hate. Miliband has just approved one of Britain's largest solar farms near Selby, and the people who actually live there are so thrilled that they're raising money to drag the government to court. Welcome to Net Zero Britain, where saving the planet apparently means annoying everyone who lives anywhere near a proposed energy project. Let's dive into this absolute banger of a local planning dispute that's somehow become a national political battleground. So here's what's happening. Miliband, in his capacity as Energy Secretary and self-appointed savior of Britain's energy future, gave the green light back in December to something called the Helios Solar Farm. And when I say solar farm, I don't mean a cute little array of panels on someone's barn. I mean 1,175 hectares of land, which for those of us who don't think in hectares is roughly 2,900 acres or about 1,650 football pitches. It's massive, absolutely enormous, the kind of thing you can probably see from space if the weather's nice. This behemoth would generate 190 megawatts of energy, which sounds impressive until you realize that Britain's total energy demand is around 30,000 megawatts, so this solar farm would provide less than 1% of what the country needs. But hey, every little helps, right? Except the locals don't think it helps at all. They think it's an environmental and agricultural disaster waiting to happen, and they're so convinced of this that they're literally fundraising to take the government to court. Enter HALT, which stands for Halt All Large Transmission/Solar Farms, because apparently even the campaign groups need acronyms these days. HALT is trying to raise 15 grand to bring a high court challenge before a 6-week window closes. Because yes, there's a time limit on challenging government decisions, which makes sense from an administrative perspective, but must be incredibly frustrating if you're trying to organize local opposition and crowdfund legal fees at the same time. It's like being told you can appeal your exam grade, but only if you do it before lunch, and also you need to pay for the privilege. The good news for HALT is that they're about halfway to their target and reportedly just days away from hitting their goal, which tells you something about how strongly people feel about this. Raising £15,000 from local campaigners isn't easy. That's a lot of bake sales and sponsored walks. But when people are angry enough and organized enough, they'll find the money. And these people are definitely angry. Brian Ward, who's 40 years old and presumably having the midlife crisis of fighting against solar infrastructure, told The Telegraph that locals have already suffered disruption from 2 separate 50-megawatt solar sites currently under construction. So this isn't their first rodeo with renewable energy. They've already got solar farms going up around them, and now here comes another one that's bigger than the previous 2 combined. It's like ordering a pizza, being told it's too much food, and then having someone deliver 4 more pizzas you didn't ask for. Ward's argument is pretty straightforward. He says they've had legal advice that suggests the government hasn't properly reviewed the cumulative impact of all these energy projects on the local area. It's not just about this one solar farm in isolation, it's about this solar farm plus the other 2 that are already being built, plus whatever else might be in the pipeline. Death by 1,000 solar panels, if you will. Each individual project might seem manageable, but add them all together, and you're fundamentally transforming the character of an entire region. And Ward isn't just worried about the view, although that's certainly part of it. He's concerned about prime agricultural land being taken out of production. This is land that currently grows food, which, last time I checked, people still need. And it's home to deer, barn owls, bats, and birds of prey. So you've got this weird situation where building renewable energy infrastructure to save the environment might actually harm the local environment. It's the kind of irony that makes philosophers weep and campaigners very, very angry. Now, here's where Ward's strategy gets interesting. He's hoping that even if the legal challenge doesn't succeed outright, it might delay the project long enough for a new government with different ideas to take over. Which is basically saying we might not win in court, but if we can stall this thing for a few years, maybe Labour will lose the next election and whoever comes in next will cancel it. It's political rope-a-dope. Just keep dodging and delaying until the other guy gets tired or replaced. And you know what? It's not the craziest strategy. Big infrastructure projects are vulnerable to political changes. If you can bog something down in legal challenges and planning disputes long enough, there's always a chance that the political winds will shift and suddenly it's not a priority anymore. Look at how many projects have been canceled or mothballed over the years because a new government came in with different ideas. It happens. But then you've got the other side of this argument represented by Enso Energy and Cerro Generation, the companies that submitted the plans. They're saying this site would produce enough power to supply 47,500 homes. That's not an insignificant number. That's a small town's worth of energy. And unlike gas or coal, solar doesn't produce emissions once it's operational. From a climate change perspective, this is exactly the kind of thing Britain should be building if it's serious about hitting net zero targets. Energy Minister Martin McCluskey has been wheeled out to provide the government's talking points, and they're pretty much what you'd expect. He says families in Yorkshire have seen their energy bills go through the roof because Britain is exposed to volatile gas prices, which is true. Energy bills have been brutal. And his solution is that the only way to make British people better off long term is by securing clean, homegrown power that we control. Also true, in principle, energy independence is a worthy goal. McCluskey goes on to say giving the green light to Helios Solar Farm is another step forward in the mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower, creating jobs, driving economic growth, and protecting family finances. It's a greatest hits compilation of political buzzwords. Clean energy superpower, check. Jobs and growth, check. Protecting family finances, check. It's like they've got a bingo card of phrases that focus groups responded well to. And look, there's merit to what he's saying. Britain does need more renewable energy. Energy security is important. Creating jobs is good. But what this entire narrative misses is that the people who actually live where these projects get built often don't see any of those benefits. They see their countryside transformed. They see agricultural land taken out of production. They see their property values potentially affected. And they see politicians in London making decisions about their communities without what feels like adequate consultation or consideration. This is the central tension in basically every renewable energy project. Nationally, we need clean energy. Locally, nobody wants it in their backyard. It's NIMBYs, I'm sure, but it's also a legitimate question about how we balance national priorities with local impacts. If your view out the window is about to become 1,175 hectares of solar panels, being told that this is good for the country as a whole probably doesn't make you feel much better. And it's not just Helios. Ward mentioned that there's a separate campaign opposing another energy scheme called Light Valley Solar located to the west of Selby. So Selby is basically becoming Solar Farm Central, multiple huge projects all concentrated in one area, which again raises this cumulative impact question that HALT is basing their legal challenge on. At what point does the concentration of energy infrastructure in one location become too much? The legal argument is actually clever if they can make it stick. HALT isn't arguing that solar farms are bad in general, or that this specific project is necessarily terrible in isolation. They're arguing that the government hasn't properly considered the cumulative impact of multiple projects on the same community. It's a process argument rather than a substance argument. They're saying the decision-making was flawed because it didn't look at the bigger picture. This kind of challenge can be effective because it doesn't require proving that solar farms are bad. It just requires proving that the government didn't follow proper procedure when assessing impacts. If the court agrees that cumulative impact wasn't adequately considered, they could potentially send the decision back to review even without saying the project itself is wrong. It's legal judo, using the government's own rules against them. Of course, the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero isn't commenting on live planning applications, which is standard practice but also deeply frustrating for anyone trying to get answers. The department that approved the project won't talk about it because talking about it might prejudice ongoing legal challenges. So we're left with campaigners saying one thing, the developers saying another, and the government saying no comment. It's not exactly transparency in action. What makes this whole situation even more complicated is that both sides genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. Miliband and the government think they're securing Britain's energy future and fighting climate change. That's not cynical politics. That's a sincere belief that renewable energy is essential for both environmental and economic reasons. Meanwhile, the locals think they're protecting their countryside, their agricultural land, and their way of life from inappropriate development. That's also sincere. These aren't bad people on either side. They just have fundamentally different priorities. The problem is that Britain's planning system isn't really set up to resolve these conflicts in a way that satisfies everyone. It's adversarial in nature. Someone wins, someone loses, and then the losers try to challenge the decision in court. Rinse and repeat. There's not much room for compromise or creative solutions that might address both the need for renewable energy and local concerns about impact. And here's the thing that really gets me about all this. Britain has plenty of space for solar panels that doesn't involve covering prime agricultural land. Every commercial building, every warehouse, every supermarket, every car park could have solar panels on the roof or overhead. Urban areas are full of surfaces that could generate energy without taking a single acre of farmland out of production. But rooftop solar is more expensive and complicated than just plunking panels on cheap rural land. So that's where the big projects go. It's a classic case of taking the path of least resistance, except the path of least resistance runs straight through communities that don't want it, and agricultural land that probably shouldn't be lost. From a developer's perspective, it makes perfect sense. Land is cheap, access is easy, connection to the grid is manageable. But from a public policy perspective, you have to ask whether this is really the best use of that land. Brian Ward's comment